Amazing. So, hello and welcome to week 4 of ADHD Awareness of Daily Lives. Today we'll be talking about when they don't get it. If you've missed any of our previous lives, you can watch them on our YouTube or LinkedIn on Empower or Ascend ADHD. So next week we're starting the week off with 2 ADHD Coach Q&A sessions. So if you have any questions, you will be able to ask them live in the chat, or if you think of anything in advance and you want to get it out there before you forget. I know I tend to be the same way with that. If you actually want to scan this QR code on the screen, it'll take you to a form and you can submit any questions on there. Or if you want to, feel free to give us a DM on TikTok or Instagram. I'll also attach the link below. Amazing. So today, obviously, we're talking about when they don't get it. Today I'm joined by the lovely Yvonne, who's one of our amazing coaches here. Yvonne has coached so many people with ADHD. She's incredibly lovely. So I'm delighted to get the opportunity to pick her brain today. How are you doing, Yvonne?
Oh, doing really well, thanks. It's great. It's a great topic because it's one that's just so present for people with ADHD and, people who don't, obviously, and trying to understand, maybe friend, partner, work colleagues. So, yeah, it's sometimes, unless it's lived, it's hard to get.
Exactly. It can be a big thing when you're trying to explain to someone and go, it's not this, it's this, So
Yeah.
kind of why is it, do you think, that a lot of ADHDers often feel misunderstood?
Well, I think one of the main reasons is because it's not visible, right? So people, it's not like if it were, another kind of disability, the physical disability, where it's visible and it's seen. So therefore, many of the challenges with ADHD, which are around, time sensitivity, around executive functional challenges, they show up as maybe being late a lot, appearing, just not fully organized, having difficulty prioritizing things. And so that's often seen as being lazy or careless, or not really caring, when actually nothing could be further from the truth for somebody with ADHD, right? So it's just not, it's the invisible nature of it. I think that really, it's hard for people to see because people function so well in so many parts of their life.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any kind of common ones that obviously that you've heard through coaching that have affected?
Yeah. I mean, the classic is, you just need to try harder. You know,
Mm,
I think you ask any ADHDer about their school report, and the common theme will be they would be great if they could pay attention or stop talking or stop daydreaming or scribbling on things or, sit down. Like these are, so it's often,
yeah.
it's just like if you were to try harder, this would be, you would be great. So you often also hear, just that somebody's just too much because maybe they're hyper and have, are exuberant and great energy, and so and like to move at a pace, and so people neurotypical brains can find that hard to keep up with. And just say it's too much, or even thought processes, in explaining something, they may have gone to 4 or 5 topics, and that can be hard to follow, I guess, for some. It makes
Yeah, I was. It's great. No, I was on call with some of my friends the other day, and one of them asked me a question, right? And I kind of started explaining it, but then there was another relative part, so I then had to go on to that part, and then the next part of that, and that, and that. And she was like, "I forgot what I even asked you in the first place," and I was like, "I forgot what you asked me in the first place." And it's every single thought all at once, got to get it out. Went on this whole big tangent. We were like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that is because there can be so many thoughts, that there's, sometimes it can be a barrage of thoughts when something is triggered and a memory is triggered as something is said, and you're going, oh yeah, and this and this, and I remember this. But it can also be the fact that, that for ADHDers, we will tend to see a big picture. And we don't tend to just sit in an isolated area, in like kind of a tunnel of a specific question. So when a question is asked for a neurotypical brain, they're kind of going to go much more to well, there's the question, here's the answer, right? From out in. Whereas a neurodivergent brain is going to go from, oh, there's the question, what do I know about that? And it brings you all the way around. So that's the beauty of it. But that's where there's misunderstanding and, that can be there.
Yeah. Do you think kind of obviously there's a lot of myths around ADHD that obviously contribute to this? Are there any kind of that stand out in particular that you're like, that is just not true?
Oh, well, everybody's got a little bit of ADHD. It just so diminishes the impact of ADHD. It's really, and the thing is, yes, the traits that are there are human traits that everybody has, right? Everybody can be late sometimes. Everybody can have periods of time where they just don't feel quite as organized. All of those things can be there, or feeling a little bit more emotional or sensitive. But with ADHD, it's the frequency, it's the impact, it's the duration, it's the intensity of which that's felt, and it's most of the time, and so therefore they are not normal traits. They're very normal. Everybody experiences, but it's at a far greater intensity and impairment for people. So yes, everybody can be a little disorganized. That doesn't mean everyone's a little ADHD. So that certainly is one, I think it's around that it's just for kids. That thankfully has over time is slowly, I think kind of dissipating, because I think just with so many people becoming aware of their ADHD, and so much more diagnosis, both in children, which then has caused so many adults to become diagnosed, right? So that one, hopefully over time that is going, but you still kind of do see that. There's also, it's like, because you're ADHD, well, you're all over the place. How could you succeed, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. And so many entrepreneurs, lawyers, traders, creative people, authors, like, phenomenally successful commercially, and also successful in their whatever their own version of success is, right? They don't all have to be famous. So you can be incredibly successful with ADHD. And then that almost leads on to the other myth that because you're successful, you don't have ADHD. How could you have ADHD? Right? So it's just misunderstood. So it's kind of, you can't really win.
So, but you're fine, you can do all of this, so it must not be that bad. It's like,
yeah, no, absolutely. It's so, and that's it, back to that hidden nature of it. And because people with ADHD from a very young age, unconsciously tried to fit in, tried to do the things the way other people do. So it's a lifelong of masking, a lifelong of just trying to read the room so that you can fit in to how things are. So that leads to such misunderstanding around ADHD. What's going on in the background? I always love that visual, of the duck gliding across water, but actually its feet are just going furiously underneath, and that's an ADHD, big energy then, big expenditure, because of that.
Literally, it's what I've been hearing a lot is the kind of the reality of all of the tabs open, loading. It's like they're there. It's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I just don't think I don't care. It's like, no, the tabs are there, but the Wi-Fi is having a bit of a moment, and I just can't open any of those tabs. They're not loading. I'm looking at all of them, and it's that thing of, it's not I don't care. It's not I'm lazy. It's not I can't do it. It's just I can't get started on it because I don't know what.
Yeah, and it's often, if it's presented in a certain way, or it's that creates a difficulty, a challenge. But people within workplace perform incredibly well.
Yeah.
But those that struggle with those executive function challenges, that struggling is primarily because they haven't found the strategies that work for themselves. So they have tried to work to other people's norms and other people's, ways of doing things. When you can shed that and just say, well, I need to find my way, and my way is fine. My way is acceptable. And shouldn't be judged for being different. It's just how I do it. Then they get on really, really well. Like entrepreneurs are incredibly successful because they take that leap. And it's, they're just, this is how I do it. Right. And that's really important.
Yeah, no, it is. Kind of, what would you say, obviously, with those misunderstandings and the difference, what would you say kind of is really the difference between a neurotypical brain and a neurodivergent brain?
There are some significant differences, and they're neurological differences that are there. So, it isn't about, want or not want to do something. It's neurological. So, obviously the biggest part we see is around the regulation of attention and motivation and emotion, right? They kind of would be the main areas that we'd see. Dopamine, there's the uptake has an enormous role to play within that. And so, plenty of dopamine there, but the uptake just isn't there unless the circumstances are right. And so that is incredibly difficult. And it's very hard as part of the misconceptions. It's very difficult for somebody who is wired for importance, like most neurotypicals. It's important, it's extrinsically important as well as intrinsic. So it's important that I file this report, or I get my expenses done, or my tax returns are filed, or that's important, therefore they can do, right? Because the brain, the dopamine just fires in and off they go. For neurodivergent brain, somebody with ADHD, the dopamine isn't there. It's like, you might keep pressing the button, but there's no uptake. So therefore, so much more wired around interest. That's the part that's hard to understand, because people will just say, well, what do you mean you're just not interested? I'm not interested in this, so I can do it. Why can't you? Or what do you mean it's boring? Like, we all have to do boring things, just get on with it. And that's not how it works, because if it is not intrinsically of interest, we are purpose-driven people, passionate, purpose-driven people. If it is not intrinsically of interest, that dopamine doesn't fire, and it's really hard. So that's one of the biggest difference that we do see. And I think another big part is around there's, our nervous system. It's a different nervous system. We operate in a different way. And that, there's that wonderful expression of the canary in the coal mine, is the first to notice the shifts. People with ADHD or neurodivergent in general are very attuned to environment and energy shifts and aware. And so they will notice things first and more intensely. So that can lead to greater emotional sensitivity, but it also gives great insight, right? And intuition in terms of interpersonal skills for many. So they would be some of the main differences, I think.
I love that. Do you think that obviously it does, but in terms of kind of performance and perception of that, how is that impacted, and what do you kind of think it leads to?
Well, you see, when you go back to that importance and interest, and the difference between the two, it can be perceived, well, how come you can just jump into action when this happens? And that can be performance, that can be workplace, that can be home, that can be school. So how come you can do this, but yet you can't file your expenses? Or how come you have absolutely no problem going out and doing the garden and working hard doing it all day, but when I ask you to do something like put the bins out, you just don't do it? Right? It's not that you just don't bother doing it. It's not even on your radar. It doesn't even sink in, right? And your head has gone somewhere else. In school, it can be incredibly challenging. I think that's one of the most challenging times with ADHD, because the child doesn't understand themselves what's going on. And it really requires a lot of knowledge of those around them and teachers to really understand the impact ADHD has, and that interest. If they are not interested, they need another way to be engaged, because of course they've still got to do the schoolwork, or if it's workplace, you've still got to get the work done. But it's then about finding that way that's going to get you going. And there's very much that, it's with ADHD, it's situationally variable. right? You can go, and it doesn't require going into incredible hyperfocus. I mean, we can go into great hyperfocus and get phenomenal work done. And there's no issue with decision making, prioritizing, organizing, planning, right? Because we're right in there. It has other issues, but in terms of no longer aware of time and those things. But not everybody has to go into hyperfocus to get things done. That you're genuinely interested in. But that's the biggest impact, I think, on performance, is the lack of understanding that if it's not important enough to that individual, they can't do it. And it's also not a statement of, well, if you're saying something and I have now tuned out, it's not because I don't find you interesting. It's because my brain has just gone, oh, you've said something, that's now sent me over here. And now I'm thinking about that. And now I've got a glazed look on my face. And now I'm no longer listening to you. I haven't a clue what you said. But that's because the nature of just the way our brain works. But we're thinking of great things. So, of course, it does require regulating yourself and learning how to do that, to hold yourself present when you need to be present, without stifling that ability to be able to, think of so many different, amazing, great things.
Yeah. And so obviously with a lot of those things, what are some of the ways that you'd suggest that maybe friends, family, colleagues can actually help to support those ADHDers?
The most important part for ADHD is psychoeducation. You've got to understand how your brain works. You've got to. It is not possible. It is getting into a car and having no idea really how it drives. Or to be honest, it's more complex. It's like getting into an airplane and expecting you to be able to fly it, right? You've got to know what all those knobs and switches are doing, how they're doing it differently, and how to get them started, right? In the way that's going to work for you, in the way that's authentic to you, and then accepting that. And I really coach from a place of awareness, and that's awareness around your brain, how it works, your behaviors, accepting that it's okay to think differently. It's okay to bring that. And many people, those that don't come for coaching, who are really successful in whatever it is and whatever their field is, because they've already realized that. Right? They've already found the strategies that work for them and accept them and just go with it, right? But there's so many people who are diagnosed, and particularly late diagnosis, that just have masked for years and blended to what other people, how they do it. So that psychoeducation for yourself first, and then those around you. And those, if they're close enough and dear enough, they will spend the time to read, to listen to podcasts, to kind of inform themselves, and then have that conversation about what that's like for you. And then also really important, you don't have to be apologetic for it, right? And don't expect somebody to be apologetic. Of course you need to get somewhere on time. And of course you have to value and respect other people's time. But it's about finding the ways that are going to help you to do that, and your ways, not that expecting, which we all do, well, the clock is going to stay the same time for the next hour, because we just don't feel time passing in the same way, right? So it's getting those strategies around whatever areas: time management, emotional sensitivity, executive function challenges. But knowledge is key.
Yeah, no, it's real. And you kind of, when you get that knowledge yourself, and you're explaining it to other people, I personally found it really interesting to see, because I see the difference between the people that actually want to help and the people that just don't really care. My mum, for example, when I got diagnosed, she was looking into everything. She was sending me podcasts, articles, this. She was sending me everything to try and help. And my friends as well, I'm so grateful, have taken it kind of upon themselves to really start looking into it as well. Both two of my close friends are in uni, and they're writing dissertations on ADHD and neurodivergent. Literally. And you see those people that, when you explain it, because I understand it now, I've gone from that kind of, I don't know what's wrong with me, and not kind of talking about it because I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know at first what it was. But now that I've spoken to so many people and they're hearing it and going, hang on, yeah, no, this, okay, yeah, no, you're not just being dramatic. Oh, it feels like that. It's like you see the people that are close by and the people that want to know, and it's made such a big change for me communicating with my friends, communicating with my parents. They get it. So in terms of kind of for an ADHD, how are some of the ways you can help people get it? Essentially, how would you go about communicating those needs? How would you go about starting the conversation around it?
Yeah, well, at first is starting to learn to understand your own needs and identify them, right, and accept them, and coaching is obviously superb at doing that because it really creates that space for you to try to work that through. It's very difficult to work that through on your own, because it's been a lifetime of feeling, that you aren't enough, or you're messing up, and that casts a cloud over all the amazing things that you do. It personally, internally, that's how it feels. This feels much bigger than all the great things that you've done. So getting that awareness first of all for yourself, and then it's that psychological safety is really important. So that's amazing, that your mom really took that time. And so it is about finding whoever those people are, those champions are, and those champions can also be in the workplace. They may not only, obviously in our personal lives, people are more vested in us, right? Spending that time in the workplace, less so. But there can be, a manager, a colleague. Once you've got that awareness yourself, you can then start to articulate what it is you need, be it that you need to be able to work from home on an extra day a week, or you need, noise cancelling headphones so that you can keep focused. Once you start to understand your needs and what it is that you need to operate at your best, then you can start having those conversations. That you'd need to feel that there's a safety and a security for you to do that. Otherwise, it can be challenging. And that's, again, there's many times I've worked with people in coaching and doing that, of helping them to identify where that psychological safety is, and then how to address it, and to bring up those topics. And it's very individual. So it's each person that you decide to share that with will respond differently. So it's having that acceptance in yourself that this is fine, and other people need to just come on the journey to learn, and work with you on the strategies that you're putting in place to be able to overcome. Because this, yes, it may be difficult to plan and organize, and so many thoughts come together, but there are strategies and ways to manage it when you're aware of it.
Exactly. And it was obviously kind of approaching that conversation can be extremely daunting. Obviously we've got RSD in the equation as well. So kind of going,
Yeah.
I feel like I need this. And so obviously with the theme being for this month, the many faces, I think is what you're saying with coaching, finding that approach that works for you, because not everyone is going to, have the same thing, finding that thing that's personal that makes you actually go, okay, yeah, no, I can do this. And it's so individual. And
it's so individual because, learning to understand how you process information, learning to understand, are you visual? Do you need to hear it? Do you need kinesthetic? Need to hear it and write it? What is it that you need that's going to work for you? And everybody, and that's just human, everybody processes differently. But when you've got that wiring, that that is wired for interest as opposed to importance, you've just got to find your way that's going to have that interest and get that dopamine uptake in whatever way. And it may still remain a boring task, but it may be that having gone up for a walk around the block beforehand, having, just got something that got that spark into your head, that went, right, okay, now I can do it. Countdowns, bringing friends on board, having, deadlines, deadlines that you set up for yourself, mini deadlines, starting small, taking a little part of the task and not trying to do the entire thing. Before you know you will have the entire thing done, but it's the getting started bit. Just take one little bit. So there's so many ways, and it's so individual. And that's where it's an amazing journey, because people actually get to know themselves for the first time really well.
Literally, no, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? It's this. Oh my, everything started to kind of make sense from a place where I was so, oh my God, everything's just wrong with me. I'm just a bad person. I can't do this. Why can't I function? It was like, oh my God, it was like light bulb. And all of a sudden it was like, ding, ding. Oh, okay, that. Oh, it all makes sense. And it became so much easier to do those things because I understood myself and I understood the strategies that would work for me.
Okay.
So kind of for obviously anyone listening who might have ADHD or suspect that they might, and they're feeling a little bit stuck, what would you say, what's kind of the first step that you would do after kind of speaking about everything, the first initial, what do we do?
If you can, talk about it.
Mm.
Find somebody, in your life that you can have that conversation with. And that may be somebody who's close to you, but it can also be some of the community groups. There's plenty of community groups for that support ADHD. Starting to articulate it and starting to put all of those pieces together is really important, and that's kind of that first step, because that's you start joining the dots. Getting a diagnosis is phenomenally helpful. Some people choose not to, but it is phenomenally helpful because then you really get that that proper care then of and that expertise, and that's the first that's the kind of the first port of call. So getting yourself to that point first is just having hopefully somebody that you can share it with, or a support group, and then your GP to go and then look to a diagnosis. And if your GP, it's getting better, but there have been many that have been dismissive, you go elsewhere, because you just back yourself. You know yourself, so you back yourself and you find a different way. But getting that diagnosis is a great step, but it's not essential to be able to start to learn to deal with ADHD, because there's long waiting lists. So you don't have to wait for this magical date. You can start then educating yourself. There's so many amazing forums. TikTok and social media has to be remembered. You're getting little snippets, and you're often getting little snippets of the negative stuff, even if it's not told in a humorous way. ADHD isn't all about negative. There's so many positives, and every person who has ADHD has so many positives. So, there's amazing podcasts to listen to that are really insightful. So there's so much to learn. And then if and when you get your diagnosis, and if and when medication works, doesn't work, then support coaching is absolutely amazing at finding the strategies that will work for you. And that's how you learn to live long term with ADHD, feeling well and good and thriving, as opposed to the more closed, and that sense of hiding and masking and feeling guilty and not good enough and questioning yourself.
Yeah. No, genuinely, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Obviously, a lot of things that resonated, obviously, with me personally, but I'm sure for anyone watching, if you do feel like you do need that support, I can obviously say that coaching for me has been hugely beneficial. There's so much that I obviously understand about myself now that I didn't before. It's kind of taken that weight off a lot. So if it is something that resonated with you, you can obviously check out our website. You can have a free call with the lovely Yvonne as well, or any of our fantastic coaches. Or if you have any questions about ADHD or ADHD coaching, as I mentioned, we have our Ask a Coach sessions next week. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to send us a DM, or if you scanned the code that was at the start, or the link that's I'll put in the box, you can ask any of those on there. Amazing. So for those Ask a Coach, on Monday we have for family and education, and then the second day is for workplace and entrepreneurs, whichever one you feel is more relevant. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Yvonne. we
you
will be.
and for sharing as well, Rachel. Amazing to actually, hear the impact firsthand.
It is, no, and it's I kind of I know that I share a lot because I hope that if there's someone that resonates and hears it, can start to take those steps, because it's transformed my life genuinely. And I just kind of think about, if I'd have heard this information and I'd have known these things a while ago, the impact it could have had. So obviously, if it does resonate with anyone, then more than welcome to reach out to us, and it would be fabulous.
Right.
Amazing. But until then, thank you so much. We will be back live on Monday to answer your ADHD questions. Thank you so much.
Bye.